She was 19. She dropped out of Stanford with an idea scribbled in a notebook. 9 years later, she was worth $9 billion, richer than most CEOs will ever be. There was just one problem. The machine at the center of her entire company never actually worked. Not once. And somehow, it took over a decade, $500 million, and real patients getting wrong diagnoses before anyone stopped her. At 19, she had an idea that seemed almost too simple. What if a single drop of blood could replace the needle? It's a genuinely good idea. Less pain, lower cost, faster results. The kind of idea that changes an entire industry if it works. So when a 19-year-old Stanford dropout said she could build it, some of the most powerful people in the country believed her. She dressed like Steve Jobs, she talked like Steve Jobs, and Silicon Valley, a place obsessed with the next visionary, wanted badly to believe it had found her. Within a few years, the company was worth billions. She was on magazine covers. She was invited to the White House. Everyone wanted a piece of this story. But behind the confident interviews and the magazine covers, something wasn't adding up. Inside the company, though, a very different story was unfolding. The machine, nicknamed the Edison, kept failing basic tests. So instead of fixing it, employees say the company quietly ran patient samples on ordinary commercial machines, the exact technology Theranos claimed to have replaced, and passed the results off as their own. When investors or journalists visited for demonstrations, former employees say the results were sometimes preloaded. The test would appear to run, but the outcome had already been decided before it started. Here's how bad it actually got. In later testimony, one whistleblower said that out of 100 patient samples run through the machine, only 12 came back with correct results. 12. And when the quality control tests kept failing, the company didn't slow down. Former employees say they used something internally called an outlier deletion process, a quiet way of describing deleting the results that made the machine look broken and keeping the ones that didn't. Employees who noticed all this weren't free to simply talk about it either. Court records show staff were bound by strict non-disclosure agreements, the kind that threatened multi-million-dollar penalties for speaking up. 2 young employees noticed. Their names were Erica Chung and Tyler Schultz, and what they were about to do would take enormous courage. When they raised concerns internally, they say they weren't met with gratitude. They were met with intimidation. They left the company anyway, and they became 2 of the most important whistleblowers in Silicon Valley history. But while the company scrambled to hide the truth internally, real people, real patients, were still walking in every day, trusting the results they were given. Because here's what all of this actually meant. Once you strip away the money and the headlines, real people were getting real test results. And some of those results were wrong. Some patients were told they had cancer markers that weren't real. Others were told they were fine when they weren't. Pregnant women received inaccurate results about their pregnancies. People made real medical decisions, sometimes life-altering ones, based on numbers that were never reliable to begin with. This wasn't a software bug or a rounding error. Former employees have said, under oath, that leadership knew the technology was unreliable and let patients use it anyway. This is the part of the story that often gets lost in the $9 billion founder headlines. Before this was a business story, it was a patient safety story. Then, in 2015, a Wall Street Journal investigation started asking questions nobody at the company could answer. Within months, the story that took a decade to build started coming apart in public. Regulators inspected the labs and found conditions posing immediate danger to patient health. One by one, the company's biggest partners walked away. The company's response to the people exposing it wasn't to come clean. Court filings later revealed Theranos spent roughly $150,000 hiring private investigators to follow and intimidate the very whistleblowers who'd gone to the press. It didn't work. The Wall Street Journal kept publishing. Federal and state regulators kept investigating. And the more the company tried to bury the story, the faster it came apart. In June 2018, federal prosecutors filed criminal fraud charges against her. The company that was once worth $9 billion had already collapsed to nothing. That September, Theranos officially dissolved. But for the woman at the center of it, the consequences were only just beginning. In January 2022, after years of legal proceedings, a jury reached a verdict: guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors. Notably, she was acquitted on the charges related to defrauding patients directly, a legal distinction that still matters to the people who received those wrong test results. She was sentenced to over 11 years in federal prison and ordered, alongside her former partner, to pay $452 million in restitution. She began serving that sentence in 2023. As of this year, she's appealed and had her sentence reduced slightly, but the core conviction still stands. So, how does someone fool the smartest investors in the world for over a decade? Not with brilliance, with a very old trick, telling confident people exactly what they already wanted to hear. She didn't out-invent an industry. She outperformed everyone's willingness to ask hard questions. If you've ever wondered how one person can fool investors this sophisticated for this long, the answer isn't that she was uniquely brilliant. It's a pattern. And it's the same pattern behind our next story, too. This channel is about exactly this, pulling back the curtain on how companies and markets actually work, one story at a time. If that's useful to you, subscribing means you don't miss the next one. If you haven't seen how the bottled water industry pulled off a similar trick, that one's right here.